Welcome to Flying for Flavor. This is Stephanie Pichet, and I have, if you listened to a previous episode, brought back one of our, I want to call them behind the scenes secret informers. Nikki showed up on our Girls in the Industry episode because she not only worked in hospitality, but she also worked in as a flight attendant previously. So she was a good resource for anything having to do with on the plane. And since I was just on a plane, and I had a lot of questions that I wanted to ask, I thought I'll ask them in front of her, we'll record it, and then you all get the answers at the same time. I think that's fair, right?
Yeah, sounds great.
So we're just going to refer to her as Nikki. That is not her real name. We're trying to kind of keep this a little bit anonymous, only for protection of the company she used to work for, maybe some coworkers and her future career plans. So we kind of want to keep it that way.
Yes.
So what are we drinking today? It is kind of midday, so we had to go a little light. So we are sampling one of the bottles that Norm brought back from Prince Edward County. You'll be able to catch that on the PEC episode that I taped probably, I guess it was probably earlier this month. And it is the Trail Estate Chardonnay. It is unfiltered, meaning that they kind of let all of the lees and the remnants during the fermentation process, left it in the bottle, so it just adds a little bit more of that mouthfeel that big Chardonnay lovers really enjoy. So I wanted something also kind of buttery, so I brought back, because I made it for a private event I did yesterday, and it went over so well, and there's a lot of butter in it. So I thought buttery Chardonnay and a buttery salmon rillette would be kind of a nice afternoon snack while we're taping this. So if you hear crunches, I'll try to edit out as much as I can, but other than that, you'll just have to listen. And yes, I'll post the episode on the website. Show notes today, of course, are stephaniepichet.ca /flavor55. 55 episodes already.
That's awesome.
Crazy.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I don't know if everyone's listening to all 55 episodes, but if you are a diehard listening all the way through, congratulations for getting through 55 episodes. Okay, so let me just rhyme off the questions. Number one thing, why does the attendant now, because it never used to be, ask to see your boarding pass when you're first getting on the plane?
I think it depends on the company.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the company I work for, actually, we didn't really need to see the passes. Like, you showed the attendant, like, at the top of the stairs before getting on the plane. Mm-hmm. They saw it, they verified everything. Other than that, we don't need to see it, other than if you don't know where your seat is.
Okay. So because there have been more recent things. I can name airlines because no one's knowing which one you worked for, but Porter asked me. Of course, I've fought a lot with Porter lately. Who else did? WestJet did. Okay. But yeah, so when I first get on, even though like my seat might be real close or something, doesn't matter if they notice that Norm and I are traveling together and they just asked his, they still asked for mine too. So I thought maybe you had an inside track, but what would be the reasoning for that?
Honestly, when I worked, we didn't ask, but rules change daily in the airline industry. They'll have one rule 1 second and then something completely different the next. Mm-hmm. So it has been a few years since I worked.
Okay.
So it definitely could be changed at this point.
I'm wondering if it's a security thing.
It could be. Yeah. Verifying names.
In case, like, especially those, I'm thinking about the planes that are on the tarmac.
Yes.
So, like, Porter, you sometimes are walking out to the plane, and it might be just company policy that as much as you got checked in at the gate. Yeah. Right? That anybody can just
I didn't work on the planes that were, like, just on the tarmac like that. Yeah. Like, they had the tunnel going in.
And that could be one of the reasons why you didn't have to ask. That's true. Because you're pretty much locked in, right?
Yes, you are.
Okay, and here's the big one that everyone wants to know, including me. Does a cell phone really need to be on airplane mode?
It's really funny. I left it on often. I would text. I would text at 10,000 feet in the air. I would text. I'd be texting. I'd be turning it on. Oh, we're landing. I'm turning on my phone because there's a certain point that you do lose signal.
Yes.
But I know that on descent around 10,000 feet that you can text. It's not supposed to interfere. I actually had a pilot friend who actually said that it doesn't interfere anything. I was always a little careful with it. Like, obviously on the job you're not supposed to have your phone, so I'd be like hidden in the back.
You say that, hey, I'm not going to say which a recent flight. I was kind of surprised. Almost every flight that I've been on recently, every person, especially when I'm sitting near the front, they all have their phone with them. Mm-hmm. And it's not hidden very much anymore.
I didn't always. Sometimes I definitely like had it out where people could see. The other thing is too, sometimes you use it as like a timer or like a watch. You know, you can use it for other stuff. I also used to play a lot of games on my phone when like
killing
long
time.
flights.
Yep.
Yeah, because like the smaller planes don't really have like shorter flights, but the larger planes, like I worked on Boeing 737.
Okay.
So you're trained for a specific plane, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the flight attendants that work on like the smaller aircraft, so just trained for those ones. And sometimes you can be trained in more than one aircraft. But yeah, so the one that I worked on normally went on some decent flights, and sometimes like cross Atlantic.
Okay.
So those are long.
Yeah, they are long, and that was the whole thing. I mean, I laugh because, you know, I remember I think my brother, and he's probably not gonna care if I say this, but he always tells me that, you know, like airplane mode's for wimps. I think he actually said it probably a little bit more vulgar.
Well,
more
it
vulgar
would drain
than
your
that,
battery having it on probably that entire time. I don't know.
Yeah,
It
and
does
because
save your battery.
Yeah, I'm not really concerned with battery because I always have like a battery
Yeah.
pack and stuff with me. But just that sometimes I'm getting into work stuff, and I don't have a plan set up on my laptop. So this way, if I need to, oh my God, I forgot I have to message somebody or whatever.
Yeah.
So at least I know. I mean, I'm not going to do it the entire flight. I think that's kind of crazy. But basically, you're saying
you
that.
signal at some point, right?
Yeah. So if it's one of those things that after, because they do, it's interesting. They do mention it, of course, in the announcements, right? But I usually have flight attendants stop at my row more often than not, and they're more concerned about my earbuds being in my ear during takeoff than they are
That's true.
about is it on airplane mode. They never ask me.
I've never asked anyone that question.
Yeah.
But the ears, because they want you to listen. You know, especially with demonstrations. And
Okay,
stuff like
yeah.
that, they want like the attention because it's like it's safety, right?
Okay.
That's like the number one thing in flights is like safety, safety, safety. All
Correct.
That. So, if it has something to do with safety, like listening to like earphones, like having that in your ear, they want you to pay attention to the safety demo and, you know, make sure that you know what you're doing in case something
Well, that would make
happens.
sense because sometimes on especially in those longer flights where they provided headphones,
Yeah.
they will, or they have these those in-flight entertainment
Yeah.
systems. They'll basically say to remove any headphones unless you're using the entertainment system.
Yeah.
And that's because the voiceover and stuff is
Everything's in
piped
there.
through,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's ridiculously loud, but it's piped
Yeah.
through. Okay, so biggest pet peeves for flight attendants, not just from you, but when you think about
Yeah.
coworkers.
Trying to think of, honestly, like, well, for me, the biggest thing was safety stuff because sometimes it's like I've been in situations where a passenger could have compromised my safety, like landing or something like that, and they're trying to like, and especially if it's bumpy or there's like a lot of turbulence, you know, some stuff is like going on, and they're trying to give me their coffee, and I'm like, sit down, please. Like,
Yeah,
I'm sitting in my jump seat, I can't like take your coffee. I literally had a situation where I was in the back, so of course it's a lot more bumpy back there, and I was sitting in my, like, about to sit down in my jump seat, and then someone there's a passenger, like, we did checks, like, we, like, you know, made sure that the cabin was secure, and then there's someone I can turn around and I see, because there's also like a mirror so I can see in the aisle, and cause my back is to the aisle, and I can see there's someone like walking up with like a coffee cup, and I'm like, oh my God, like they're trying to give me their coffee cup. So I get out of my seat as we're like going into turbulence and grab the cup. I throw it in the garbage and barely had time to sit down and get my belt on again before we started hitting danger bumps.
What's the big emergency with someone taking your coffee cup?
I don't know. Hang on to it. Like,
I mean,
there's plastic bags somewhere. Like, shove it aside, put it there, just drink it.
I think maybe it's just because it's going to get turbulent. They just don't want.
Maybe they don't want it near them,
or spilling on them. But maybe.
Yeah, well, it's dangerous for them too, because it's like if you're walking around in the aisle, like I have had my feet come off the ground in the back of a plane, but out of the blue, just boom, there it is. Like I'm like, you know, a couple of feet in the air, like floating in the back of the plane. You know?
Yeah.
So it's definitely like really dangerous.
Well, I was going to ask this later in the episode, but since you brought it up, I've heard through many articles online that never ever drink the coffee on board.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have when you need to, right?
Yeah.
But I heard it's made from the same kind of like unfiltered, recycled water type thing.
No, like it's separate.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
like I wouldn't drink the water from the tap. Like I wouldn't go grab a water bottle and use that
Fill it?
water.
Okay.
Yeah. But the coffee, they have like their own like filter system, and that's all separate.
Then why are there so many articles about that saying never drink anything with the hot water?
I
Make with
honestly
water.
like
No coffee, no tea.
Yeah, I it's funny because when I was working, I heard that, and then like, I think I'd asked someone, they're like, no, like it's fine because everyone drinks it. You know, you go, you make yourself coffee, especially when you have like 4 hours of sleep
Yes.
and you're starting a 14-hour day again.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and you don't have time to like go out and get yourself something decent. You know, it's like everyone makes coffee. The pilots will drink the coffee. Like,
Well, I mean, okay,
I don't know.
and that's good to know. I mean, if you guys were bringing on your own coffee, I'd have to worry about it.
yeah.
If I
don't
see you
know.
walking in with a Timmy's cup, I'm going to be starting to worry a little
No,
bit.
well, of course, like it's way better. Like, I mean, Starbucks, Tim Hortons, any other coffee's probably better. But if there's nothing else, I'd definitely drink it. And like, and I'm obviously talking about like the airline I worked for, like my experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely don't want to like globalize and say, oh yeah, no, the coffee's fine like everywhere. Like I don't know what other companies,
Okay,
right?
so if you're working for a different airline and you want to shoot me a message, let us know whether
if there's any like contradicting information like out there.
because when I'm doing early morning flights,
Mhm.
I mean, especially some of the smaller regional airlines, like our Sudbury Airport,
Yeah.
if you're doing that red-eye flight in the morning,
Mhm.
there's no place to even get a coffee.
No.
So by the time that they start the beverage service,
Mhm.
I don't even have, they barely even have to say hello to me, and
Yeah,
I'm just saying coffee. So
2
it's
cups.
yeah, exactly. So considering I'm consuming quite a bit, to be
Yeah.
kinda nice to know that I'm not getting poisoned or anything.
No, I mean I drank a lot of it too. So
Did you?
Mhm.
What about the food? Did you eat the airplane food?
Yes, all the time.
All the
It's
time.
free. It's free, and also they just throw it out after.
Oh, so whatever people don't eat on the plane.
Yeah, they throw it out, and so I would bring so much stuff home.
That's interesting to know. I bet you a lot of people don't know or just think that, like they restock the plane and they just fill in the blanks. They probably don't realize that at the end of the flight, whatever has not been purchased, consumed,
Yep.
or whatever, it all gets tossed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's sad.
It is really sad.
Oh.
Well, like the fresh stuff, like the sandwiches, like not the snacks. Like the
No, of
snacks
course
we
not.
Normally, like,
But even the sandwiches
Yeah.
and stuff,
Oh,
there
all the
must be a
sandwiches.
way. Ooh, now you got me thinking.
Mm.
So there's, of course, in Ontario, there's a new, it's called, what's it called? Foodwaste.ca, I believe. I'm going to put the proper link in there. But anyways, it's an entire program throughout Ontario,
Mhm.
and Sudbury was one of the test pilots.
Okay.
But it's to match nonprofit organizations who need food with businesses
Yes.
who are trying to get away from food.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if it's either the airlines or the airport, if they know, like if a flight lands in Sudbury and they are discarding all of those things,
Mhm.
I'm sure that they can be put to use someplace.
Oh, I definitely think so. I thought it was such a waste.
Oh,
Like, just so
very
much-
excited. Okay,
So much food.
so I'm going to touch base with my contact here at that agency in the Sudbury office and just find out if she can reach out to the airport, because I had
Yeah.
no idea. Now that my
Yeah.
brain's just going of all that stuff that could be thrown out.
Oh yeah, like that's why I would like honestly fill up my lunch bag with like just sandwiches and bring them home. Like at the time I had roommates.
Yep.
So I'd bring them home. My roommates like loved it. It was like, and I also like I brought like different kinds of sauces that I could add or like.
It's
to
like
make
yeah.
them taste a little bit better because it's like especially if you might not have a lot of money at the time
Mhm.
or it's free food. Like you have to like weigh it at the end before like you have to try to sell all of them first.
Yes.
And if there's some left over, then it's like jackpot. And-
So that's actually kind of a cool thing. So now I'm thinking that before you second guess that airline food, if you're concerned that it's been sitting there for too long or best before dates,
No.
now you know it's always fresh.
Oh, it is.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
awesome.
I actually I really like the food on the plane.
Yeah,
Like sometimes it kind of got old because we were eating. The
it's
same
much
thing.
better than it used to be.
Yeah, I bet.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah, big deal. Okay, so we talked about the pet peeves, and that has to do with safety stuff.
Yeah.
Do you have to speak French?
Most of the time, yeah. Or it does not have to be French. You just have to have a second language.
Really? Because I always find when they're doing the announcements in French after English, right,
Yes.
on the Canadian flights, some of them are struggling.
Yeah.
And the only reason I know that is because I find that I thought maybe it was just my ear,
Right.
that usually I can follow along because I understand French, but I don't speak it very well.
Mhm.
But when my French-speaking husband's sitting beside me and he's making a face and looking at me, like that
Oh,
was
dear.
really not a great try.
Mhm.
I was kind of surprised because I figured, especially with Canadian travel and airlines, that they would need to have both languages.
Mhm.
But I guess it's probably not mandatory to have French as your second language.
No, it doesn't have to be French. You do need 2 languages. Although the older flight attendants only have English. Because at the time when they got hired.
So they were grandfathered into new
Yes.
policies.
Mhm.
Okay, so that makes sense. But that's why they're reading off that script like the life depended
Yeah,
on
there
it.
is like it depends on the plane. Like, but normally there is like an automatic thing that you can just play. And some people spoke French. They still just like played it because they were lazy. Yeah, I
That's-
read everything. I rarely used it.
That's cool. Okay, so at the gate, I have seen, and I don't know if you'll know this because you won't necessarily work there.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen it sometimes where, you know, when I'm checking in to get on the plane, and sometimes they've actually had like a person's name either handwritten down or in there. Is that basically like a watch, not a watch list, but
No, I mean, like, we get, like, a list of, like, people with special needs.
okay.
You know, any infants on board, those kinds of things, because those all need to be briefed, right? So we do actually have a list of certain people that it's, like, you know, so-and-so's name sitting at, like, you know, Delta 2 or something.
Okay.
You know, something like that. Or 2 Delta.
Okay.
But,
So
like,
that's where I was thinking is that there's a because there was one time where there was a gentleman ahead of me who went through, and after they checked him in and before they did mine, the guy took 2 seconds, grabbed a pen, and wrote his name down.
it could have been something that, you know, maybe he was unhappy with something, or maybe something
Oh,
happened.
okay.
Needed some special attention. Like, there's just so many things that it could be.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
and maybe it could be depends on the situation. Maybe he was a nervous flyer. You know, maybe it was like, you know, it could be very well. Yes, watch.
Well, it's
this
a good. So
person.
the people at the gate then, are they going to basically translate that information? I'm assuming to you guys.
I've had that happen where I've actually had to go to the top of the gate to greet someone that was a nervous flyer, and just kind of have a talk with them, because that's the thing. It's like, you don't want to take on someone that's going to have like a total meltdown in the middle of the flight.
Oh,
right?
yes.
And you're gonna have to use your judgment. Actually, I had that happen where this, like, she had a really bad flight. They actually went through like emergency evacuation, right, on a flight. Wasn't with my company, was with a different company, but she was very nervous, and it was a long flight. It was like Toronto to Vancouver, or Vancouver to Toronto, or something like that. And yeah, it was like, so I went to the top of the gate and kind of had to use my judgment to kind of see, like, is this person going to be okay, or are they not? Like, it wasn't a full flight. We upgraded her, and, like, you know, so she was sitting right in the front with us. I checked in with her, and I think I was lead at the time too, so I was like the person in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I thought she was pretty okay. Like, I asked her, like, do you feel like you can do this? And she was like, I think so, and whatever. So I'm like, okay, well, I mean, let's go for it. And, you know, obviously we're keeping a very close eye on this person.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to go too much into nervous flyers or the fear of flying, because I think that's going to be a whole other episode with Stacy, because she's kind of qualified in those kind of things. But if somebody is nervous, and usually things like turbulence are what kind of freaks them out,
Yeah.
where's the best place to sit on the plane that you would feel the least amount of that?
In the front, you don't feel very much turbulence. The back, you'll feel a lot of bounce.
Okay.
That's kind of like the tail, right?
Okay. So in other words, if you're kind of a nervous flyer and you can't handle the turbulence or whatever, the closer to the front of the
Yes.
plane you are, the better.
Yes.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, because it'll be, especially a big plane. So small planes, it's hard to escape the turbulence, because it doesn't really matter where you sit. I mean, obviously the front will be better, but definitely larger, like medium to large planes. If you're sitting at the front, sometimes you don't even feel anything. It could be like bumpy in the back, and then you walk to the front, and it's totally fine. Yeah,
Oh,
because
it's good to know.
there's times where we've actually, like, if you're working in the back, we've had to call to the front and, like, be like, can you please put on the seatbelt sign, because it's really bumpy in the back, and the pilots have no idea. They're like, oh, really?
Yeah, exactly. I've also heard, this is again, I'm going off topic of the questions, something about that sometimes there are either codes, like either if the flight attendants kind of want people to sit down, they need a break, that they will like get the pilot to put the seatbelt sign on and say there's turbulence or whatever, or sometimes it's kind of, I've actually read that in there where they will say, okay, well, things are getting kind of crazy, we need people to sit down, so we will actually we'll ask the pilot to sort of help us out, and then they'll make an announcement, put the seatbelt sign on, kind of. Yeah.
I've never done it. I've never seen it. But I mean, it sounds like something that, I mean, yeah. I mean, if people are like walking all over the place, and they're like, you know, getting a little bit, because sometimes you could get some really crazy groups, right? Depending on the people, especially if they're drinking or something. And
hello, bachelor parties.
Yeah. Exactly. And you're just like, oh my gosh, like, people like sit down. You can't like make people sit down, but normally it's like the pilots will help you out as much as they can.
Good to know. Okay, now we're gonna get into the salacious questions. Ever caught anyone at a Mile High?
No. Honestly, like, maybe the bigger planes where there's a lot more rooms, but the planes that I worked on,
I actually tried to avoid, especially with long, like, short flights. I don't even want to go into that bathroom.
It's gross.
It's gross.
Like, the floor really just, they clean it. Like, honestly, I see everyone, like, before and after each flight, they are clean. It's just there's something about them that I don't even really like going in there.
No, and not to mention, I mean, there's no room to move in there. And as much as they can clean it before, people are gross.
Yeah, and during the flight, exactly. I have heard.
Okay,
stories
okay.
Oh gosh, I don't even know if I want to share them this stuff.
there's-
And they're not
okay.
my personal experience stories. It's kind of like secondhand stories that I've heard from other people. But I've heard that there's been like people who have like squatted on top of the toilet, like, you know what I mean? Like instead of like putting their feet on the toilet on the seat and then squatted like on top, and then like something like that, or like some people will use water bottles to kind of clean themselves.
Oh, like squat.
Yes.
Oh my god.
And then they get water all over the place. Yeah, and I have a personal experience when like it's very understandable situations. Like I've had a child pee on the floor.
Yes.
You know, that's like okay. And then I've also had a special needs dog take a number 2 on the floor, and thank goodness I did not have to clean it because I was not in that section. So I was like, oh, that sucks, guys.
No, but those,
those are understandable situations, obviously. But it's still gross. It's still like, oh.
I can't even imagine how someone would try to do that gymnastics is standing on the toilet seat.
I like rude people.
Ugh.
That's probably the thing that drives me nuts the most is probably like the rude people and the entitled people. Like strange is like I feel like I was always pretty accommodating. If someone came to me like, oh, can I please like have this? I didn't think twice about it. I was like, oh yeah, what can I do to like make your flight better? You know, like really. But it was like the people that what really got on my nerves was when people were rude or entitled or like they're just taking up all the space, or they're not like they book a seat and it's like the one guy. He was flying back from Cancun, and so obviously, it's like hot destination, and people are just on vacation, so there's still a little bit of that like resort entitlement going onto the plane.
Yes. And
I always find that really difficult because people are like, well, why don't I have this? Like, it's like, I'm sorry, you're on a plane, it's the tube flying 40,000 feet in the air. Like, I'm sorry, we don't have a pool. Like. Especially our planes, like, the 737s, they're not massive. They have one aisle in the front, 3 seats on the left and right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, especially if you're sitting, there was this, like, tall man sitting all the way at the very last row, which doesn't recline, right? And so when you book these seats, normally it's indicated.
Yes. Right?
It says, like, these seats don't recline. The overwing exits don't always recline. Like, you can't recline these seats. So, and there's not a lot of leg room either. Like there's certain seats that have more leg room. So if you want these things, like book it ahead. Pick your seats, book it ahead.
Exactly.
If you want a comfortable flight, like think of this ahead. Normally, like obviously, like I always try my best to like make people comfortable. But when it's a full flight and I can't switch you anywhere, I'm sorry, but you're stuck. It's a 2, 3, 5 hour flight, and that's all that we have. Like if it's not in my power, I'm not gonna like. Maybe you can probably see if there's like a really nice person on board that's willing, like that's small and willing to switch with you. But the chances are, like if they're comfortable and no one else wants to do that, like that's pretty much it.
And you wouldn't be able to even if there's a seat. It's always surprising to me. There's always one guy on the flight. I say guy because I've seen a lady do it too. But they're sitting in economy, and they either don't like the people that's sitting beside or whatever, and they want to go and move up to another section because there's a free seat up there.
Yeah.
And I always think that, but we like especially if I paid extra for that seat, you don't just get automatically move up.
No, you can't just like automatically move up. Depends. Like obviously the flight attendants have the power to do that. I've done it.
Yep.
It depends on the flight. Obviously because if people are sitting there and they've paid for their seats and then someone else goes and sits there. Like sometimes it's like if there's like a couple that were just on their honeymoon.
Yeah.
Stuff like that I've done. Like it's like, oh, you guys were just on your honeymoon. That's so cute. And we have free seats. Then we'll try to like make their flight a little bit more special, or like if there's a nervous flyer, that kind of thing. Like some kind of like special reason to move up because it isn't fair to the people who have paid for those seats, right? Because you get all of the like this free stuff.
Yes, and exactly. And that's the only thing is that, again, it goes back to if you have specific needs or wants on your flight, just like you would at a hotel or any other kind of your travel and destinations, kind of planning ahead for what your requirements are and making those arrangements ahead of time.
Yeah, definitely wouldn't bank on hoping to get, moved up for free.
No. Trust me, I've tried.
Yeah, you can pay for it.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
it's
just the transatlantic ones,
yes.
Right? I'm always like, oh, maybe I can go and sit there, because sometimes even the upgrading cost at the last minute is still crazy, astronomical.
Yeah.
What's your number one tip for flyers?
Definitely like boarding the plane. I've seen it just get absolutely chaotic, and like when you're working in the cabin, because there's obviously different positions, right? In the planes, there's people setting up in the back, people like in front greeting, and there's like a couple people normally in the cabin trying to help people board, and you want it to be quick.
Yes.
It's definitely about like being on time, you know, getting to your seat and getting out of the way.
Yes.
Not like I've seen people just like stand in the middle and they're like, oh, I'm just gonna put my bag up, and they have their luggage everywhere, and then it's like they're taking their time, they're holding up the entire line, and then you just see a line of people just waiting, and it's like, oh my god, like, you know. And also, like, we're told as flight attendants that you don't have to help with putting luggage up.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Yeah.
But people expect it.
They do expect it, and I'm like, if I get injured trying to like put your bag up there because it's so heavy,
or if I break something or spill something.
Yeah, exactly. You have something like really fragile in there, and then I break it. Like, that's not, you know. Then it's like I'm liable for that now or something. Like, I'm, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like a bag of worms that like obviously like I don't want to open. If there's obviously an older person that can't lift up their baggage, you know, we're always there to help. You know,
and not to mention if there's an older person or someone that needs assistance, if you're a kind soul that is sitting nearby, take 2 seconds and help them.
I have seen other passengers be super, honestly, like that's probably the biggest tip is like be friendly, you know, be understanding, be patient, and, you know, help out, because like even in like evacuation situations, like we're trained to get other people to help us, you know, because it's like they're like able-bodied people. So what we're also trained to do is that when people are boarding, that we check out who could potentially be someone that could help us in like an evacuation situation.
Oh, interesting. That's good to know.
Yeah, so it's like if we see someone that's like, you know, they're fit, they're, you know, tall maybe, like, then we're like, oh, okay, yeah, like where is that person sitting? It's like, it's like a back of your mind note. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, okay, there's the, you know, group of guys over there, they're pretty strong. Like they could probably like help, you know, get people like out of the plane if ever need be, you know, or something. So because you have to delegate a lot of like in like emergency situations, it's about like delegating to other people.
So just so you know, so if you happen to be a big guy and you're listening, you just may be called upon.
Be ready.
Be ready, exactly. So we've talked about humans. What about pets?
Pets, absolutely. So sometimes we have some special needs pets. So obviously we talked about like anxious flyers, that kind of stuff. So we have pets that, those ones, like it doesn't matter what size, they sit at the seat, at your feet.
Yes.
But they have to like, there's very specific rules for flying with pets.
Okay.
So for smaller pets in a carrier underneath, they have to fit underneath the seat. So if the carrier doesn't fit underneath the seat, then that's a problem, and we won't be able to take off. So definitely, you know, making sure that, so we've had cats. I've actually seen a bunny. I'm trying to think of what I've seen a few different pets, but I think I've seen the bunny. I think that's probably the
What's the proper terminology? It's called
like personal support.
Yeah,
animals?
Personal support animals. I don't know, how does a bunny is personal support animal?
Yeah, so the bunny, if it's a personal support animal, they don't need to be crated, so they can sit on your lap.
I'm just thinking about allergies.
Yeah.
So the fact that you said someone brought on a cat.
Yeah, I've seen cats. And for that, it's like if there's an allergy, you have to space it out. So it's like if there's an allergy, if there's a cat and then there's the person with an allergy, they can't sit beside each other. You have to like move them, make sure that they're far apart.
Okay, now does the person with the cat move or does the person with the allergy move?
Normally, we think we would move the person with either. See, this would be a good upgrade situation.
Yes.
So then it's like, oh well, do we have a seat like available, you know, for an upgrade? Because obviously the person with the allergy would be like, you know, it would be a huge inconvenience for them to sit there, right? So it's like, okay, well, let's try to move them up ahead to first class, or yeah, we'll move the person with the pet up ahead somewhere different.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah,
that makes sense.
So yeah, so like I said, like in the story earlier, there was a like personal support animal that was, because, you know, they weren't in a crate, because it was actually a really big dog, and the dog was just sitting like in the person's legs, like on the floor, and that's why they ended up going to the bathroom there.
Of course.
Yeah. And another thing I wanted to mention, I had a scenario happen where, so normally with bigger dogs, they get crated and they go underneath the plane, right? And I feel like the story would probably freak out some people. Like, the thing is, like, obviously airlines always try their very best to like handle, you know, situations the best way that they can. But definitely working at an airline makes me a little bit nervous traveling with my larger dog, because I've seen other people be willing to just let it go and be like, oh, well, I think the dog is there. Let's just go. You know, because I was in a situation where, so normally the person gets a ticket to say your dog is on board, you know, they're loaded, they're all good, here you go, right?
Okay.
And it's part of our list of like
passengers.
Passengers, exactly. So like this passenger has a ticket. So we have to wait before closing the doors to get a ticket to give to this passenger to be like, hey, your dog's good. So this one flight that I was on, we didn't get the ticket yet. We were waiting, but that was the only thing that we were waiting on was that ticket. And all of the pilots and the other, because I wasn't lead at the time, so the lead person wanted to go. They were ready to close the doors. We didn't have the ticket. And I actually like put my foot down. I was like, no, like we're not leaving. This person doesn't have confirmation that their dog is on board. Like we're flying, you know, Toronto to PEI. Like we're not leaving without this dog and make at least a confirmation. So I literally had to like hold the plane, like, and everyone else was really just ready to go. You know, so I definitely felt that wasn't okay. Like there was definitely like, you know, it's like we really need to prioritize animals, you know, especially when they're like, you know, underneath the plane. They're not with just the rest of the cargo, like they're up front, like in their own special place. So that's safe. But I've also seen, so this wasn't actually during my experience as a flight attendant. I saw it on Facebook, our dog trainer. So she, you know, works on dog and sometimes the dogs get moved to like Vancouver or something like that, right? So the one dog got loose on the tarmac.
Oh no.
Yeah. So it was an approved crate. Everything was like up to code. Everything was perfect. It was a brand new crate too that the dog was in. And it fell off the belt and cracked open with the dog inside. And then obviously the dog is scared and the dog runs off on the tarmac. Like, so that's like, I'm just like, oh my gosh. And that was like, my heart like just went out. So I've just heard too many stories about things like happening that now I'm like, I would definitely feel very nervous about flying with like my big dog underneath. Like I would almost want to like, just like, I don't think it's possible, but like register my dog as like an emotional support animal.
Well, you can. I was going to say, that was going to how to conclude this section was that I'm going to be adding a link about our pets episode we did before, and there's forms and everything else. Unless things change, you can pretty much, by paying a small thing, get a certificate. Yeah, just to say, like, especially if your dog is good with, like, you know, other people, because it's a really small space, you know. And if your dog's not, like, totally massive, like a St. Bernard or something like that. Yeah. But, yeah, I was a little bit nervous. Like, there's been also, like, while I was working, not my personal experience, there's, like, more of a story that I heard. The dog was shipped to a different city. Yeah, I've heard that, too.
Yeah. So, you know, stuff like that, I mean, that just terrifies me. Like, you know, I'm sure that a lot of people do the best that they can, but I think it's just something that's just not paid attention to enough.
So basically you're taking a chance. If you're just going to go there and back, or if you're going away for a weekend or a short haul thing, I would say just for the comfort of the dog. I still always say, unless, especially if it's a big dog, some dogs are just better staying at home. Yes. Staying in a kennel, staying with friends or family.
That's what I would do. Unless you're like moving somewhere, but even then maybe I would drive. Unless it's like a different country, like abroad.
Exactly. I would do the same thing. So any other, so you could tackled a lot. Do you have any other messages to our listeners that are going to help everyone fly happier and safer?
I'm trying to think. Well, I guess like maybe if you're like, I know you're going to talk about like nervous flyers and stuff like that like later. Like it's totally safe, you know. And like I actually find the bumps and the turbulence. Obviously, you want to sit down, put your seatbelt on. You don't want to just be like, oh, turbulence is no big deal, because it is a big deal. But if you're sitting down with your seatbelt on, it's a really fun ride.
That's the best thing. You think of it as a ride.
It's like a roller coaster. Do you like roller coasters? No.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I really appreciate it. Hopefully, maybe you can come back when we schedule that Nervous Flyers one, because it'd be great for Stacey to talk about the mental part behind it and how to overcome it. Yeah. But if you're there, just to sort of provide advice for what to do on the plane. And Stacey's also a travel agent too, so I'm sure it'll be a very interesting conversation. Yeah, cool. So we'll schedule that for the fall. Cool. So in the meantime, if you have any little tips because you happen to work on an airline and you want to send it on to our listeners, or if you have another question for Nikki, I can also pass it on. Don't forget the show notes are at stephaniepichet.ca/flavor55. And as always, don't forget to rate and subscribe us on Apple Podcast or any podcast player that you're listening to. Until next week, cheers.